Hey, this is Craig. If you like this show and you want to support it and you want to keep it free, head on over to everyonelovesguitar.com/support. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/support. If you're a business owner and you want to increase your cash flow, or if you're a label or artist and you want to promote new music, then listen up. For information about advertising on Everyone Loves Guitar, including information on geographically targeted ads, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise. If you want to buy or sell a home or investment property and you're here in the Tampa Bay area, in Hillsborough, Pinellas, or Pasco counties, then listen up. West Florida Real Estate is a local residential real estate broker that's helped over 250 Bay Area homeowners buy and sell their properties in the last 4 years alone. If you're looking to sell, you'll want to get their free report, The 7 Biggest Mistakes Homeowners Make When Hiring a Realtor. And if you're looking to buy a property, you definitely want to get your hands on the 21 Most Expensive Mistakes Tampa Home Buyers Make When Buying a Home. Each one of these reports is going to save you time and money. Inside, you'll discover the 7 most important things to consider when hiring a realtor, what to do if you're buying and selling a home at the same time, and the danger of choosing a realtor who agrees with everything you say. To get your hands on these free reports, head on over to westfloridarealestate.com. That's westfloridarealestate.com. Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. We got a really cool West Coast guitarist today and a very popular, really well-liked player as well with Marc Bonilla. And before we move forward, just a couple of things. Don't forget, you could subscribe to the channel. You could watch this show live on YouTube on the Everyone Loves Guitar channel. And I want to thank our mutual friend, Lyle Workman, for connecting us. Lyle, thank you very much. Yes. Lyle's going to have a wing in his I got to have a Lyle Workman wing here.
Yeah.
After all the people he's turned me on to. He's supporters. So thank you, Lyle. Marc Bonilla. Marc's played guitar and toured with Warner Brothers recording artist Toy Matinee, along with producer-composer Kevin Gilbert, as well as recording 2 critically acclaimed guitar instrumental albums for Reprise. Those albums are Double E Ticket or EE Ticket and American Matador. And he's just released a really great record that I had the pleasure to listen to. It's been highly anticipated, called Celluloid Debris. Very cool record. There's some amazing playing on there. He's one of these guys you listen to and you're like, holy shit. He's produced, recorded, and performed with several artists, including Keith Emerson, who he toured with from 2006 till 2016 as he passed, Ronnie Montrose, Gamma, Glenn Hughes from Deep Purple, Eddie Jobson from the UK, Edgar Winter, Ambrosia, Derek Smalls from Spinal Tap, David Coverdale, Rob Halford, Don Felder, Peter Frampton, Sammy Hagar, Robbie Krieger, James Newton Howard, Tesla, and CTA with Hall of Famer Danny Serafine and Bill Champlin, who was on this show a while back. Bill Champlin from Chicago. Dude, no big names here. In addition to live performances, he's earned an Emmy nomination for compositional work and recently completed 6 seasons with Steve Porcaro on the hit series Justified. He played on the soundtracks of major movies like The Bourne Legacy, Iron Man 2, The Scorpion King, Green Lantern, and others. And he's also performed with several orchestras throughout the world in China, Mongolia, London, Birmingham, England, Russia, and Germany. And as I was telling him before, people always ask me sometimes, hey, who do you have upcoming on the show? And every time I mention Marc's name, everybody's like, he is the best guy around. You're going to love him. So it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, Marc. I appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure as well.
Hey, how did you first get started in the music business, and what was, I guess, your first big break?
Well, I started when I didn't start in the business when I was 5, but that's when I picked up the guitar. My dad would be practicing guitar in the bedroom, and I would be listening through the wall, and I had this little Wyatt Earp 4-string guitar that had action of about 16 miles to the fret. And but I would pick out the melodies that I thought he was trying to play, so he'd come out and I go, is this what you're trying to do? And he'd go, yeah, that's what I was trying to do. So I started taking lessons when I was about 10 from Bill Tapia in Lafayette, California. I was born and raised in Walnut Creek. And they were jazz lessons, and it was cool. And of course, I wanted to learn Beatles stuff, but he was a jazz player, so we had to learn jazz versions of Beatles songs, which weren't getting me any women. I had to then dig into my own albums. I went in with a pickaxe and a miner's hat, and went in there and really started to suss out the chord progressions and all that in the proper keys. But my first break was in a band called Rock Island in high school. At Del Valle High School, it was made up of the guys that went to the high school, Mark Stanley, Peter Hayes, and Jim Matthews. And it was great. I got in there. I got the audition because I could play I'm Going Home by Alvin Lee.
Oh, great song, man.
Woodstock. That was my party trick. I even had a red ES-335, like the one you have in your back there. So that was a graduation present from my folks.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was cool. So, and I remember the first time I got paid for it, it was like, wow, this is legal? You can actually get paid for doing what you do for free? Man, this is great, so we were together about 10 years. We did a lot of instrumental stuff, or not instrumental stuff, but more original stuff, there were some instrumentals as well. But it wasn't until, I'd say his first break, Ronnie Montrose got involved in producing us. And he and I really hit it off. We had the same bizarre sense of humor and listened to a lot of the same music. So we got, even after the band broke up, he and I continued doing stuff with each other. And he was the first guy to take me into the studio and says, look, man, I don't want you playing these clubs the rest of your life. You need to break out. So I'm going to pay for this and we'll get a good demo out of it and see what happens. And some of the demo stuff from that album became Double E Ticket. So he was really my first break, and he was definitely my mentor. It's a lot of his DNA in my playing.
Man, what a tremendous act of kindness.
Well, he was like that. He had an amazing heart of gold, and he bonded with my folks. He was from Colorado, and apparently my mom reminded him of his mom. So he would come over and have talks with her and, kind of vent stuff out that was bothering him and all that. I mean, stuff that I was never privy to, but that was between them, it was just a kind of a thing because he lived about 2 miles away from where we lived. So it was great. It was a good friendship.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you eventually wound up playing with him?
Yeah, I did shows with him. Plus he would work on my gear. He was a total tech head, and he would work on my stuff and modify things for me. He would put 2 guitar synths together and wire it. And then I would, in turn, when he was doing his stuff with Mitchell Froome, and actually before that, when he was doing all electronic and sequence stuff, I would program his Drumlin machine and the MC4 micro composer, which you had to key in 1 note at a time. It was arduous, but I was happy to do it, So we kind of did a lot of stuff for each other, and then ended up playing with each other in a version of Montrose. We opened, I think, for Whitesnake in San Jose at one point. I remember one of the gigs was, I think, the first gig we played. But then I had him once I got into doing albums. I always had him guest on the album just for obvious reasons. I wanted my guy on there that made it all possible. So
that's really cool.
And then we did shows together, the Boys Club with Emerson and Glenn Hughes. He joined in on that. So yeah, we played on and off all the way through our.
That's really nice, man. How did you hook up with Keith Emerson?
Well, I was in a band. I was in a club band called JC and the Twisters. We were playing in San Jose, and at a pub, this place called the Britannia Arms. And I had just been working with Ronnie on the tune White Noise, putting that together, and ended up that I was playing it when Keith walked into the venue in the back, and I kind of looked at him. God, that guy looks like Keith Emerson. But all the Brits look the same, So I kept playing. We ended, and he came up, and it was like as he's coming up and going, Jesus, it is Keith, And he came up to me and introduced himself as if he had to, and said, "It was a good song, that last one you played. What was that?" I said, "Well, it was a tune called White Noise." He goes, "Oh, are you going to record it?" And I said, yes. As a matter of fact, I am. And he goes, "Do you mind if I play piano on it?" And I kind of looked at him, and the only thing I could think to say is, "Well, what have you done?" And he didn't miss a beat. He goes, "Well, I was in a band called The No." I said, "Then I had a band called ELP." And I'm like, "Oh, stop. stop. I said, I know who you are. Yes, you can play on.
Oh my God, what have you done? What's cool is the way he responded, though.
Yeah, he did. He wasn't indignant. I thought he would. I thought he would think that was a joke, but he really thought I was auditioning him for the part. That's how he was, and
that's really
so
cool.
I ended up. We ended up going water skiing the next day, which was the most bizarre thing in the world. Like now I'm water skiing with Keith Emerson. This is just surreal.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm doing a project in San Jose, and would you like to play guitar on it? I said, I absolutely like to play guitar. Are you kidding me? And that's when I met Kevin Gilbert, because Kevin was producing the session, and Kevin and I had we didn't know of each other. I knew there was a band called Giraffe, but I didn't really know what his thing was about. And so he came in with his arms folded, like, okay, who's this guy you just brought in, and Keith said, no, he's good, trust me, So I played the first thing, whatever I played, I don't even remember what it was. Kevin turned around and says, okay, you got to play that again immediately. That was good. We have to put that on tape. And we went out to dinner that night with the three of us, and Kevin and I bonded. Actually, over the Monkees and Gentle Giant. Those are the two things we were just avid fans of both.
Giant, I thought.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and so that's how Kevin and I actually got together. But yeah, so that was the first meeting with Keith.
Holy shit, that's so cool the way he responded to you. Then that really like show a lot about a person,
Well, he was that way. I mean, the great thing about Keith was the fact that he never took himself seriously, but he took what he did seriously.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there was a time we were in Naples and we had just gotten off the stage. It was the Keith Emerson band. And this guy comes up to me and he's holding my hand and he says, you've been this huge influence on me my whole life. I can't thank you enough. I finally got the chance to see you. And I named my child, my son is named after you. And I'm like, wow. And they say, and you're best, I love Tarkus. And the guy goes, okay, you think I'm Keith. How could, because we're not even the same height, and so, the weird thing was Keith was standing like right there. And he goes, can you make a picture? And I said, sure. And I'm looking at Keith like, you going to step in here? And he was enjoying it so much. He goes, I'll take it. So he takes the guy's camera and he takes a picture of me and this guy, and just enjoying it the whole time. So I'm sure this guy is somewhere in Italy has got a picture of me on his mantle. And I'm sure someone at this point is going to look, Nunzio, that ain't Keith Emerson. I got news for you. I don't know who that is. But I said, Keith, how come you didn't enjoy it? He goes, no, I was enjoying it too much. It was too much. But that's how he was. He just was a complete joker and, just enjoyed stuff. His ego was so in check, for being the level that he was. It was absolutely incredible.
I really like what you just said. He never took himself seriously, but he took what he did seriously. I feel that way about myself, to be honest with you. So that's I really like that. I wrote that down there. Talk about I'm going to name some artists and talk about maybe how you got the gig or how you connected with them, and then an interesting story about working with them. Let's start with Glenn Hughes.
Well, Glenn, I started working with Glenn on American Matador. I'd actually seen the film Life Lessons by Martin Scorsese. The first episode has got Nick Nolte in it, where he's a tortured artist, who has to deal with Rosanna Arquette. And that movie really resonated with me. It had really some good insights into artistry and how the creative process for some people, they need turmoil in order for them to generate, creativity. And one of the tunes that he played while he was painting was Whiter Shade of Pale, and it just worked, and I went, and I of course I've heard the song a million times, but it really played well in the film, and I said, man, I would love to redo that as an instrumental. So I had planned to do that, and then I thought, man, I wonder if I should do this as a vocal, and I thought, well, if I did it as a vocal, I'm going to have somebody that's really, really well known and well respected, because otherwise I'll get crucified for redoing a song that beloved. So I said, I know, Glenn Hughes might be good. I didn't know where he was. He had just come out of the Betty Ford clinic, and so I found his number through a friend of mine, and I called him, just out of the blue. He didn't know who I was. And I said, yes, I'm Marc Bonilla. I'm doing this solo for Reprise, and I wanted to do Whiter Shade. Would you ever consider singing it? And there was a long gap, and I had no idea what it was coming back. And then he goes, I was born to sing that night. You know, so I went, oh, yeah, well, okay, here we go, you know. So he came in, and you know, just watching him work was amazing. He was, you know, he's sort of kind of flashy like this, and he doesn't, you know, but when he sings, it's just this amazing voice that comes out. And he would sing a line of it or a couple of different lines and just slay us. You know, he would do this huge scream or whatever, and then he would go, "Was that all right?" You know, and it completely changed his demeanor. But we got a lot of it on film, actually, of him creating that vocal piece.
Is that on YouTube?
No, it's not. It's in my private collection. At some point, I'll air some of that. I'll put some of that out. It's amazing to watch him work because he was so good at tying his lines together and getting the right curvature and things until it was right. He's, now that's the one, you know. And so it was amazing watching him work. You know, he would craft something like a sculpt. You know, it was just incredible. So that was my first encounter with him. You know, it was just what a professional he was when he got in there and was singing and just, you know, really connected with stuff and made it his own. And that's the thing that always impressed me about him is you always know when it's Glenn Hughes. You know, he's got this inimitable style and doesn't mind changing things to accommodate that, because then it becomes, yes, Glenn Hughes doing that song as he did with Whiter Shade. He was respectful of the melody, yet he changed a few things just to make it his own. And I think it augmented the song.
Now, was that the first thing he did after getting out of rehab?
Yes.
I bet you that was a huge thing for him as well.
It might have been, yeah, because I took him on Mark and Brian's show, and we got him on, you know, he sang it for one of the Christmas shows and all of that, and it was kind of like his coming out, you know, after that. So, yeah, I think it was, because right after that he said, look, can we do an album together? You know, and so we did. We did the Addiction album together. We co-wrote it, and I produced it. So, you know, it was, you know, we definitely clicked.
That's really cool, man. Great story. Yeah. Edgar Winter. Well,
Edgar, I was a huge fan of Edgar's from years and years ago. And, you know, I grew up with his, you know, listening to him and his brother. And I got the call. I mean, I you know, I played a couple of times, like on the Mark and Brian show again.
I'm sorry, what is that?
Mark and Brian were they were a huge they were like LA's biggest morning talk show guys.
Okay.
And they would have a Christmas show each year, and I was the musical director for it. And they would have all these amazing acts come in. You know, I mean, you know, high profile acts come in, and I would have to put all the music together, hire, you know, get the band together, you know, which was a great band. It was
like a great gig.
And Greg Bissonette and Steve Porcaro and Michael Anthony. I mean, just, you know, all these guys would love to do it, and they all did it for free. It was like, because it was like in the spirit of Christmas, you know. And so Edgar was on that show, you know, but I basically just had the band come in and learn this stuff. But when he called to go out and play, I was like, man, this will be fun, because I grew up playing this stuff. I mean, I was sat in my bedroom and jammed to Roadwork, you know, jammed to all of that stuff. So what was great about Edgar was we'd be in his apartment, right? And it was like he didn't have, and I found the same thing with Little Richard when I worked with Little Richard for a minute, is the fact that the energy level from performance to just sitting around, there's no difference. He gave 100%. Even, you know, how a lot of people were in their studio, okay, I'll do this, and, you know, you kind of half-ass do stuff just to get to the next important part. And he just would give it up 100%, man, you know, all the way up to standing up and singing, you know, and all of this stuff. And it was like, man, you know, you don't have to go that hard. It's okay. Wait for performance. He goes, no, he says, I love what I do. I said, you never know when it's going to be the last time. I'll never know if it was going to be the last time that I do this. So I want to go out right, you know. So he had that great attitude of always giving 100%, and he did. So it was kind of a funny thing happened in the airport. We were talking about longevity and in the business. This is at the Salt Lake City airport, and there's stairs that are going down. And I was the one that would go on the planes with him, because he was blind. He's basically blind. He's from being an albino, and he didn't see the stairs coming up, the escalator, and he was talking about, you know, taking care of himself and all this. And as we're getting close to right to the threshold of the elevator, he goes, and it's my intention to live till I'm, and then stumbled, right? Because the elevator came up, and I grabbed him because he would have gone right down the escalator.
Holy crap.
We've gone down the escalator. So I grabbed him, you know, and he went, wow. I thought you saw that. And, you know, I didn't see it. So I told him, I said, you know, I had a moment there where I almost let you go. I can enjoy the irony of, I intend to live till I'm blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I said I reversed, but we had a good laugh about it, you know.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was a close call.
Yeah, it was a very close call, you know. But I'm glad someone was there, you know.
Did you play for him outside of the show, the Christmas show? So then?
Yeah. We toured last year. We did a few shows together. Yeah. So, you know.
Oh, wow. So you've done what?
Yeah, with Tobacco Road and all of that stuff. All the vocal and guitar trading stuff was just, I love that stuff, you know, because he would change that stuff. We wouldn't rehearse a lot of it. He'd just throw a line out, and I had to cop the line. And, you know, it's you know, it was challenging stuff, but very gratifying, you know. And again, for me, it was like one of those things where I remember when I was in high school, I told Debbie Hunter that, you know, one of these days I'm going to play with Edgar Winter. And she goes, all right.
Oh, that's cool.
So if I knew where she was today, I'd call her ass up, you know, and say, look, I told you. You remember that time I was in drama with you? You know, we talked about it. You'd think I was probably mental, but yeah. So it was gratifying, you know. And we may work on a project together, a new album together. I've got him. He had written a follow-up to Entrance, which was my favorite Edgar album, called Shadowlands, and he said he hadn't been able to finish it, you know. So I said, well, let's finish it, you know. So
very cool.
They do that after he's doing a tribute album to his brother now, but you know, I would love to work on something like that and give back a little bit, you know.
Yeah, that's nice.
You know,
is Doug still playing with him, or?
Yeah, Doug's still playing with him.
Okay, so you guys are all together.
When I play, it's because Doug has gone to Japan for this thing that he's done. So
okay. So you're okay.
So I'm just a sub, you know, but enjoy it. It's great.
Derek Smalls.
Yes, Harry. Great. It's with him. It's a yuck fest, you know. I mean, C.J. Vanston is the musical director and has been, you know, the composer for all of the films that they've done, you know, all the Chris Guest stuff from A Mighty Wind to, you know, For Your Consideration to Mascots, all that stuff. And I had gotten to know CJ a little bit better. He was a huge Emerson fan, you know, as I was. And he came down to one of the sessions, and I met him there when we were doing the Keith Emerson Band album. But when Keith passed, he came over with me to Keith's place to try and organize all the stuff that he had in his room. So we were able to kind of lean on each other, you know, because it was really tough for both of us.
Yeah, what about it?
And we kind of developed a good friendship from there. And he had asked me when this project came up, he said, look, man, I think you'd be perfect for this thing we're doing with Harry. They had just finished a new album called Small's Change, which is an amazing record. Really well produced, well conceived, well performed. And they were going to do this with a symphony. So they, you know, it was like a major production. So I came down and into rehearsals, and Harry was just, you know, the most personable, sweetest guy you'd ever meet in your life. And a sense of humor like you can't believe. Just hilarious stuff. In between, like, tunes or whatever, he would go up to the mic and commentate and do like Vince Scully at the Dodgers game, you know, voice. And, you know, it was just nothing but just humor all the way through. I mean, he told me a funny story about Spinal Tap, where they were so good at what they did that the road crew at one point, I guess they were in Germany somewhere, where an amp blew up or something. Somebody went down and they're like signaling to the road guy, and the roadies are going, yeah. Yeah, it's part of the act. It's like, no, my amp went out. It took them like forever because they just thought they were just improvising.
Oh my God.
That their amp. So they said, okay, now we're going to need a safe word, you know, or a safe sign or something, so you know that I'm not messing around at this point. The amp did go because they were so good at faking all the disasters that went on that the road crew just thought, yeah, it's just part of their shtick, you know, and I'm gonna, you know. But so it was interesting. But yeah, we. yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more shows. I think we have some more shows that are in the offing in November. So we'll have to look for those on the website. When they do come through, those will be fun. I really enjoy playing with him.
You guys ever come down here?
Where's here?
Florida.
Tampa. We haven't yet, but who knows?
Hard state to come into because everything's spread out.
Yeah. I was just there with CTA not too long ago.
Really?
Yeah. I was down there where was it? I can't remember the name. It starts with an O, but
Orlando.
No, it wasn't. Well, we flew into Orlando, but we went somewhere beyond that. I can't remember at this point. But anyway, yeah. So we've been down there a few times.
Robbie Krieger, man, that guy I saw him live with my older son, which was really nice. Probably 5 years ago, I was in second row, and I couldn't believe. I said, Nick, this guy, you don't understand who this dude is. He's like literally changed rock and roll, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we with CTA, we do a lot of we did a lot of stuff with Robbie, and continue to do. And he's the most soft-spoken, reserved cat in the world, for the amount of impact that he's had on music, like you say. And the first time we met, it was it was hard for me to. I had to really stop myself from gushing to tell him how much he's influenced my playing. And the first time that I heard the actual long version of Light My Fire, because I had gotten the single. And when my dad brought home the record, as he would, he gave me the record because he worked commercial art, and a lot of times they would be given a big bunch of albums to advertise, and he goes, my son would like those, so he would grab them and bring them home, and one of them was the Doors album. I went, but I didn't know it was 6 minutes and 50 seconds. I was used to the 2 minute and 57 version.
On the radio that they play.
I kept waiting for like drink, all of a sudden it went into an organ solo. I go, wait a minute, what? And then that amazing guitar solo, that modal thing that just sounded incredible. It didn't sound like any other guitar solo up to that point, as many great ones as there had been. And it changed my life. I was just like, wow, how lyrical that is and how thematic it is. And, and then, all the stuff after that. I mean, his playing with his classical playing on Spanish Caravan, all that great stuff that he did. And so playing with him is wonderful. I mean, he's such a self-effacing cat, and I actually told him at one point, not too long ago, just like, man, you got to understand, because he came up and said, man, you're a great player and all this. I said, yeah, but I owe a lot of that to you because you changed my style. You changed my life with these tunes. He goes, what? And I go, really, dude? You realize how amazing, the solo is in that? And he goes like, wow. I said, yeah, it was a game changer for me, and again, one of those guys like Keith that really doesn't, I don't think he realizes his impact. He's so modest and that he, and grounded. He's just the greatest guy in the world. And it's always fun playing with him. And I look forward to doing more stuff in the future, especially playing those tunes with him. It's great.
I cannot imagine what it's like.
You can see him playing and you say, that's the style. That's it, man. That's the guy who did that, and that's always fun, man.
And he's still playing that SG, man, which is
still playing the SG and making that Fender Deluxe sound just amazing.
Yeah.
It proves that it's all in your fingers, man. So much of your tone is in your fingers. You can have a great amp and all that, but you're going to get 6 different people playing through that amp, and you're going to get 6 different deliveries, 6 different tones.
Which reminds me, Ed Roth told me to tell you what's up.
Ed. Well, Ed's in CTA and he plays a lot with Robbie.
So. Yeah, he plays with Robbie all the time.
Ed and I have been together since the beginning.
He's a great guy.
Yes, he is. He's a very loyal cat and a hoot to be around. Yeah.
He was down here about 2 months ago. So we went out. We had some drinks. We had a really good. He was a really good guy. We had a great night.
Yeah, he's got a heart of gold, man.
Super cool. Very straightforward, man. I like.
Oh yeah. You get the unvarnished truth from Mr. Roth.
Man, that's all I want, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Did you study? Because I know you have a you have a very good grasp on everything going on musically. Where did you learn all that?
Well, on the street mostly. I kept my eyes open and my mouth shut when I was around people that I knew I could learn from. And I always tried to play up to the room. I put myself in places where I was the weakest link in the room, so that I could, try and get up on that next step, with musically. I took, when I was in college, and it was just, I took like 2 years of junior college music theory, jazz arranging and composition, stuff like that. And I didn't want to get a degree in it. I wasn't going to go up to a promoter and say, hey, look, I got a degree in music, hire my band. But I was able to just concentrate on the music portions of this stuff and really learn some amazing theory that I use to this day from my teacher. Was Gordon Kennington. It was just a wonderful teacher, and you don't get those very often. And I just used that, and then through private lessons, I studied with Bill Tapia. Then I had the good, amazing fortune to study with George Barnes while he was alive. And George was an incredible jazz guitarist who played with Louis Armstrong and played with Tony Bennett from Chicago. And he moved out to Concord, California. And a mutual friend of ours, Jim Gammon, who I'll speak about in a minute, was a ham radio operator, and George was a ham guy. And so he said, hey man, I got this friend of mine, Mark, do you teach? And George says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I just started teaching. I'm over here in Concord, at Larson's Music. So I ended up going over there, and he's one of the most, I don't know if he's unsung, but the people that know him understand, but an amazing guitarist, and taught me melody, taught me taste, and taught me a sense of humor to play with the guitar. And so I learned with him, and then later on with Warren Nunes, who was a Bay Area guy that was a real scrutinizer on style and application. So all three of them were invaluable to me as far as my education went. But other than that, it was all just me just keeping my eyes open and my ears open, and just learning that way.
Yeah, I mean, well, you could just tell. I mean, you could tell when you're talking to someone who's got a high level of competency in anything, you just have that about you.
Oh, thank you.
Also, dude, your voice, man, I feel like I need to shut up. You have such a great voice, man.
Well, I do a lot of voiceovers. So
yeah, I don't want to.
I was the voice of Kubota for like 2.5 years.
Your voice.
Chevy commercials and stuff. So, my wife says, you can have to with your voice. Everybody's always telling you got a DJ voice. You go, oh, that's okay. All right, I'll make it work for me. So
there you go, man.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of high profile film work, Mark. I was curious how you got involved in that, and what are the biggest challenges of doing that work?
Well, I'll tell you the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is always committees. In other words, for some reason, when an executive gets an office and a secretary, they think that they've somehow mystically been imbued with musical insight. I don't know how they make that jump.
Yeah.
But they do. And we were blessed, like Steve Porcaro and I, when we were working on Justified, the creator of the show, Graham Yost, who's a huge prog fan, by the way. He's very prominent. He's done a lot of great series, and he's a real player. And he knew of me coming in because he'd been an Emerson fan and all of that. So he was excited the fact that I was playing guitars on the project, because I was initially brought in, it was Steve's project. But he called me up and he goes, man, this is all like guitar and banjo and all that stuff. Can you come in with me and do this stuff? So I said, absolutely. So we started working together, and it ended up that we started co-writing together, but I did all the mandolins and all that stuff, and Steve would do like all the keyboards and the drum loops and all of that stuff. We worked really well together, and he would write these impossibly hard things for me to do because he had 10 fingers and I had 4, maybe 5 if you count that. So I had to retune stuff, but it came out beautifully, and with Porcaro's signature. But Graham was great because he ran interference. He said, you guys keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about the network notes, because they were often conflicting on the same cue. One of them would say one thing, and the other would say something completely 180 degrees. So he said, all we've been getting is great reports from the music, so I'll deal with them. You just do that. But that is rare that happens. So it's always hard when you're trying to get somebody to understand where you're coming from musically when they don't have a duke of an idea about how some of this stuff works. But there was one incident that was on the film Terminal Velocity. Joel McNeely was the composer, and I was brought in to do guitars. And and we're in Tadeo, and there's the entire orchestra over on one side, and it's me on the other. It's kind of like, the precursor to Braveheart, before everybody's stormed down into the middle. And, and they're looking at me like, okay, who's this wanker, and so, and all this stuff is cut live, and it's a lot of money being spent at one given time. But during we were coming up to a break, and Joel came up to me in kind of a panic, and he goes, "Look, man, I spaced on a cue we were supposed to do for Charlie Sheen's skydiving scene. I have nothing." And the director's, it got stuck, or I didn't, so he said, "Can we take a break? We'll take a union break and do lunch. Can you put something together during the lunch break so I have something to show him, afterwards?" And I said, "Yeah, all right." So I took John Robinson and Neil Steubenhouse for the two, the session guys that were on.
Neil Steubenhouse, what I've heard his name.
Great bass player. Oh yeah, he was on like Gino Vanelli's stuff. He's been on a million albums, and a million soundtracks. A real pro. And so I wrote something out, and we jammed it, and we had a couple of changes, and I wasn't even watching the film. We didn't have time to watch the film. I just had to let's get something rock, and we'll put a chord progression together. And so I did. I wrote this little chord progression, and we did it, and we filmed it, or not filmed it, we recorded it, and then I put a lead track to it, right? All about an hour. We did the whole thing in an hour.
Wow.
Came back in, and I had to sit down with the director and show him here's what we did. And I'm watching it the first time like he is, and I'm making shit up left and right, like, listening to what was being played, and I'm going, "See how I did this wobble arm thing here? Well, that accentuates the velocity of this. And you see when he comes down here, I changed the chord there because the altitude is changed, as if I really had planned this thing out. I was just flying by the seat of my pants, It just happened to be that, and he's going at the end, he went, "This is incredible. I love it. My favorite cue," and we're both kind of rolling our eyes going, "Oh boy." But sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to sell it like that, but again, it was just, it just happened to work out. But, a lot of the times it doesn't work like it because they don't get it. When you do plan stuff like that, and then they don't get it, you have to rewrite it. You have to rewrite it. You have to rewrite it. So there's been things like themes that I've had to rewrite like 15 times before they found something. So you have to have a very thick skin and take I don't know, it's not really called rejection really, but it's just, take criticism well.
Yeah.
And not get too invested, whereas if you're just writing for yourself or you're writing for something else, you can express yourself completely. You don't have to worry about someone who's usually less musical than you are.
Yeah, you got a committee of one.
Yes, exactly. So, that's how that worked. How I got involved was through James Newton Howard. We were again on the Mark and Brian show. It was Toy Matinee was on there, and we were playing, and our manager at the time, Doug Buttleman, was friends with James, and he had called Doug because he knew that Toy Matinee was one of his acts. He goes, "Who's the guitar player on there?" And he said, "That's Marc Bonilla." And he says, "I really like his playing. Do you think he'd be into doing some films, like some guitar stuff on a couple of films I'm working on?" So he asked me, and I said, "Are you kidding me? I would love that." So the first film I worked on for him was American Heart with Jeff Bridges and Edward Furlong.
Dude, that's a nice first movie.
Yeah. And then after that was Digstown with James Woods, and Lou Gossett Jr. And we worked really well together. And he considered me what he called a secret weapon because no one else in town knew of me yet. So they were like, "Who's this guitar player you got?" So he just kind of, he didn't want to like loan out to other people. He says, we'll work together, man. He's, so I did. I stayed kind of loyal to him, worked on a lot of films with him. And then I got a real taste for it. So he said, "Look, I'm going to have you do a couple cues, And so I went home and wrote like some source pieces. And he says, "I got a guy named Marty Davis, a friend of mine. He's working on General Hospital. Would you want to go and help?" So I did. I wrote us a lot of stuff with Ricky Martin was on the show at that point. So I wrote and produced a lot of Ricky Martin's early stuff. Would write the songs with Mary Beth Derry, and we did a lot of that. And then Marty got the gig with 902 on Beverly Hills 90210, so I did all the guitarists for that series. So
wow.
I got involved with doing more of that, and then I got my own series after that called Nightman with Glenn Larson, and then got management and worked over at Paramount with David Grossman and did a lot of stuff, and it just kind of blossomed from that point where for the next 20 odd years, it was major. It was film stuff and TV stuff, but that's how I got started.
That's phenomenal, man. But the first story that you told, there's certain things you do to get your feet in the door, but there's certain other things you do to keep the door open.
Yeah.
And I think that story you told about, hey man, can you put this together over lunch, is probably the kind of stuff you do that keeps the door open.
Well, James told me one time, and this is one of the things that I always remember. He said, always be part of the solution and never be part of the problem when it comes to working this way. You do not want to be the source of an issue. But if you're always the source of this of a solution to something, they'll hire you, because it's one less thing for them to have to worry about.
Yeah.
When a director gives over his baby to you to score, that's a big trust thing. That's why so many directors like Spielberg stay with John Williams. The Coen brothers stay with Carter Burwell. These guys trust them that they'll know they know their work, and they know that they will not drop the ball if it's passed to them. So it's one less thing for them to have to worry about. So if you're part of that solution, then it'll hold you in good stead.
Fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Where did you get that work ethic from? Because you are pretty.
My father.
What did your dad do? You mentioned he was play guitar and he's a commercial.
No,
artist.
he was a commercial artist. Yeah, but it was just in the things that he did. And my mom too. I mean, they weren't perfectionists. It wasn't a perfectionist thing. It was just a kind of those. If you start a job, give 100% of it. Doesn't matter how menial it is. It could be pulling weeds. But it just, we always did things right, like or don't do it all, that kind of thing, and kind of raised with that ethic. And then it just seemed to me that that's what you should do. If you're going to start something, do it right. I would just take pride in just doing a job correctly. It didn't matter how large or small it was. So, especially if my name's attached to it, I would like to be thought of when I leave this world that when somebody mentions my name, that it's mentioned with some modicum of quality.
Yeah.
That's, it's not like I need immortality. I don't, but I would like my name to be associated with something positive.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You got pride of ownership in what you're doing.
Of course. I think
totally get that, man.
And, it's
I agree.
So yeah, that's why that's why I usually don't release things until I know that they're done. Even if it's a short amount of time, it's just a compressed version of that, and you have to concentrate and focus and make sure that it's the best thing you can do with your abilities at that time in your progression.
Yeah, man, I totally vibe with that. I'm going to talk about, as a matter of fact, your new record, Celluloid Debris. But before that, what would you say, knee-jerk reaction, top 3 experiences you've had musically?
Top 3? Well, I think playing Tarkus the first time live with Keith.
That's got to be pretty cool.
When that thing starts up, that big chord at the beginning, I felt like a parachutist right at the threshold of the plane going, okay, am I really going to do this? Because once I jump, I'm committed, and then you get into it and you're swept away. And the thing about Keith was the fact that he, in the middle, he would just improvise. We would do stuff and we never knew what was coming. So we were really in the throes of creativity and conversations with each other musically during that piece, where it ended up being like a half an hour, but we would really have exchanges and really get to know each other personally through the music and through a give and trade, with the Moog and with the guitar. So it was a real cathartic experience. That was one of them.
And you, sorry to interrupt, you did a lot of the singing there.
Yes. Yeah, I did all the singing.
Yeah. I saw a bunch of stuff on YouTube, man. It was freaking great.
Well, I was a fan,
Yeah, it's really great.
Another one was the first time that I heard my music played by a symphony. We were in Munich, and I'd written string stuff, that we've had for film stuff, but this was like a standalone. And Tadje Mikkelsen, who was the catalyst for the Three Fates project, had put us together and brought us to Munich in a circuitous route through China and Mongolia. We'd done things, and so when we were in Munich with a major symphony in this incredible hall, I had written this piece called The Morning Sun, because he had said, hey, write a couple of things, because we're going to need those, on the album, and I want you represented. So we did an orchestral version of American Matador, and then he said, and then I wrote these other two pieces for the album. And so when they performed it, it was like, wow, that's it. For some reason, you always feel legitimate if there's a symphony playing your stuff. It's one thing. It's a wonderful honor to have another band cover your stuff. When you got a symphony like playing your stuff, you go, maybe what I do is too bad. Maybe it's okay, And what was funny is I went upstairs, and the producer, his name was Torsten Schreier. He was like the top producer of classical music in Europe, or one of the top guys. We had like a real heavy on the music, and he was talking to me. He said, "So where did you study?" And I said, I didn't study anywhere. And he's looking at me quizzically, and he goes, no, I mean, you must have gone to a conservatory to I said, no, I just wrote this. And you can see his neck start to tense up, because his paradigm was now being challenged, no. He says, well, you must have studied Mahler. He's getting a little more annoyed. And I says, actually, I don't listen to Mahler. I listen to Debussy and Ravel. And he goes, well, this piece sounds like Mahler wrote it. And I go, well, I'll take that as a compliment, but I don't listen to them all. And he just got more upset with the fact that how dare you come in here and write something like this and tell me that you didn't go to a conservatory, you didn't study Mahler, you didn't do any of this stuff. It was like this major backhanded compliment, that I thought was so funny, because it blew his complete conception, or perception rather, of how you write for symphony. But it for me, it was a completely different method that I used, and so I thought it was funny from that angle, but it was so enriching from the other angle of actually hearing one of my pieces performed by a major symphony. It was just
very cool, man.
This is cool. I can imagine what composers felt like, when they did that, And I'll give you a third. I mean, there's so many, but I have a buddy. His name is Jim Gammon, and I've known him ever since I was born. He's my oldest friend, and he was blind since birth. And I would watch him go down our sidewalk with a tricycle, and he would like pedal real fast. And we lived on an incline, and he would run down this thing, with his feet lifted, and he would go right into his driveway each time. He would skid and go into his driveway. So I'm like, okay. And then I found out my mom said he was blind, and I didn't quite know what blind meant at the time, but he says he has no eyes. Oh, okay. So I went up to him, kids, they just go, so Jimmy, you don't have any eyes. How do you know how to turn into your driveway? And he goes, oh, I count the clicks in the sidewalk. And when the sidewalks are laid, there's the place where the form is, and there's little indentations, and with a tubeless tire on a trike, it would go ka-ding, 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 ka-ding. So he went up to the top of the street and counted how many of those were on the sidewalk to his place. And so that's how we did it. And he was one of these guys that was never, he was always unfettered by what we would perceive to be a handicap. It wasn't a handicap for him, because sound just opened up for him. Everything was about hearing. And you could never sneak up on him. He never used a cane. He could tell by the ambience of the noise floor of the town we lived in if there was an object there. He could hear the reflection. So he would rarely run into stuff. And he would run across the street, over to our house. He didn't have a dog or a cane. He just knew how many paces before the sidewalk dipped, with the driveway, and how many paces and all this. Once in a while he'd cut across, but so he was also the main guy as far as turning me on to music, because he bought every album, when it came out. So he turned me on to the Mojave New Orchestra, to Blood, Sweat, and Tears, to Chicago, to ELP. He was the first guy to have it. And so I got so much of my education from him, and he every birthday he would give me an album of some guitarist that I hadn't heard of, or some band that says, try this out, because he knew that guitar was my thing. And I would do multiple recordings at his place. He had tape recorders and stuff down in his basement, and that's where we recorded. I have some of that stuff. And then he would go to my guitar lessons and record me at 10, which is part of it's on the album, actually. And so he played an amazing trumpet. He was an incredible trumpet player. And so years later, again, on the Mark and Brian Christmas show, I want him to come down and play. You know, so we did a version of Emmanuel, and at the end, I let him go, you know, and we were both, here we are playing together and the place is going nuts. And it was like one of those moments like, man, we did this as kids. We were little kids, and now we're in front of like 1 million, you know, the audience was like over 1 million. And here we are, still the same two kids at heart, but we're doing this in front of all these people. And we ended the tune, it was like the place just exploded. They all stood up, you know, and it was just forever. It was just one of those gratifying moments that was like, wow, this is cool that we're still doing this to this day. And he's actually on the album. He's on the new album as well. I had him playing trumpet on Sailor. So really, it's one of those things where, you know, we're just great friends and always will be. You know, you just have those connections with some of those people. And he's one of them.
Thank you, man. That was a really nice story. Very cool. So let's talk about Celluloid Dreams. So, man, Celluloid Debris. Sorry, I'm reading Celluloid Debris. I don't know why I said Celluloid Dreams.
That's good. It's fine. It's right.
11 tracks, almost a full hour. That's a lot of work, man. Especially nowadays. What prompted you to do that?
Well, that's how much I had to say. I guess I didn't really measure it out until I thought I was finished, you know, with what I wanted to say. Again, every song, there's a reason for every song being on the album. And I'm not one of those guys that like writes 20 songs and then cuts, 11 out of the herd. You know, for me, every song there's a reason for it to exist. And so I started this. I mean, I started the project right after American Matador. I had written like 3 songs, started the, you know, like the embryos of 3 of the songs, but just kind of, I stopped because I was starting to get into the soundtrack stuff. And I wanted something to challenge me. I'd already done 2 instrumental albums. So I figured, well, I want to go somewhere else now, you know? And so I did. I basically hung the guitar up in that manner of speaking for 20 years. And it wasn't until 2005 when I actually rediscovered my guitar, because Troy Luccketta had asked me to put together a tune called Hit and Run that was on my first album for his clinic, and I couldn't hardly play the parts that I played. It scared me. I was like, wow, have I lost it? You know, it's only because I was out of practice. I was playing piano and scoring and all that other stuff. So I vowed that I would never get to that spot again, and try to get a balance between live, you know, playing and soundtrack and TV stuff. So a few years ago, you know, I was always getting these emails and stuff and comments like, what happened to Marc Bonilla, you know, with his instrumental stuff? Man, those first 2 albums were amazing, and he just dropped off the map. Well, I didn't drop off the map. I was doing all these other projects with Glenn and Keith and CTA and soundtrack stuff. I just wasn't doing the guitar instrumental stuff. So I said, okay, I think now that I've gone through all of these different, you know, experiences, that I now have something to say. I can bring the last 25 years to the front of where I've gone and try to represent something that I've learned on each of those songs, you know, one thing or another. And so it just happened to balance out to 11 songs. But each song is representative of a part of my, you know, learning process or experience. And hence the title, Celluloid Debris, meaning celluloid being this, it's basically, you know, film is made of celluloid. It was a soundtrack of my last 25 years.
Oh, very cool.
Plus, and then debris was just the stuff that I picked up, the things that stuck, you know, more or less. So, and in between the songs are segs that were actually pulled, a lot of them from Jim Gammon's tapes, those tapes that we made back in the day, you know, collages of things that were part of my childhood. So it's really kind of a retrospective of my life. up to that point. So that's why I think, to me, this is a very, very important record, and I think it's my best work up to date. It's just, because I think it reflects where I've been for the last 25 years. Which is awesome.
It is a great record. Where'd you record that?
Well, I recorded the drums at Ryan Green's house, and that's Greene, because he gets his last name misspelled a lot, who's an amazing producer. And I started working with Savile Row, which is a band that we at Triangle Cat and I put together with Micah Greiner and Travis Davis, and this was in Scottsdale. And he was an amazing, amazing engineer and producer. And so we'd worked together on the Three Fates project as well, and I wanted him involved on my album. And so we recorded drums over at his place, which is in Burbank, phenomenal place. And then I had him mix it over there. Otherwise, we did everything here. I did everything at the studio where I'm at now. All the guitars, bass, and all that stuff was all done here because I have my whole arsenal here. And whatever, tone I needed, I put it on here. So, but he made it all work. He made all of those tracks. And the thing is that with this album, it's more of a, as he says, this is, Mark, this isn't really a guitar instrumental album. This is an instrumental album.
Yeah, it's an instrumental album.
Because it's so heavy on composition. And it is. There's not a lot of elongated soloing going on the album, because for me, that becomes a wank after a while. I'm not a fan of large solos. Every once in a while, like a David Gilmour, Comfortably Numb, or a Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child, yes, absolutely. Vintage solos. But for me, I tend to concentrate more on the writing of the song. In other words, the success of the song. I'm not one of these guys that writes a chord progression in order for me to solo over the top of it. To
sure.
me, it's tedious. And so all of these songs have composition to them. They're not just a chord progression that repeats. A lot of them are through composed. They go from one thing to another, and then
it's very involved.
Themes from the beginning to the other side. There are things like that. But so I just thought that for this album, I wanted to make it as orchestral as possible, because I learned so much from working with Tae Mickelson and all that on arranging and orchestrating for symphony. And so the guitars are like a symphony. In other words, there's a ton of tracks. At one point, I actually maxed out Ryan's Pro Tools rig at 165 tracks.
Holy crap.
Yeah, on The Long Awakening, which is like an 8-minute piece. That's the penultimate track on the album. But they don't all play at the same time. They're all waiting for their moment to come in, but they needed their own EQ. They needed their own track for that. Just like you've got a triangle player that's in the audience or in the orchestra that only plays on measures 48 to 50. But
right.
He has to sit there the whole time between, so you've got all these parts that are waiting to be played, but they're played with hybrids so that they're blends of more than one tone to make a third tone. And there was a lot of care and attention going into all of the different types of tones that are on the album. But that's so hence 11 tracks.
So outside of Ryan, you did all the other instruments.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I did all the recording. The only guys, I had a few guests on it, but I kind of wanted this as a personal statement. So I played I played all the guitars, most of the bass. Mick Mahan played one song because he said, "Look, I'd love to play on your record." Mick is a good buddy of mine, and so he said, "Oh, great! You left me the most difficult track on the thing. You had to really study." It was pretty intense. And then I have Joe Travers on drums, Troy Lecetta on drums, and Greg Bissonette on drums. So I've got
oh my God, some
wonderful triumvirate of different feels and different players, but all incredible in what they did and brought so much to the tracks. And then I would have, I had Steve Percarl come in and play piano, Philip Seiss come in and play piano on one track, and Jim Gammon on trumpet on one track, And like I said, most of the stuff though was just me, playing all this stuff. Cause I figured I could communicate to somebody how I want it played, but and I often did that with the drum parts. A lot of the drum parts are orchestrated, certain fills and things are, and they would nail that stuff, and then they would then bring their own personality to the rest of it and just, make it better than I had imagined it could be. So it was just, you know, I just love working with guys like that are just, they always bring their A game and really have a vested interest in making sure that your stuff feels like their stuff, you know, that they bring in. So I'm so honored with these guys.
It's a great record, man. It's extremely well composed. In fact, I actually heard a lot of Keith Emerson's influence on there.
Well, yeah, I mean, how can you not, you know, from all those years of associating with each other, you know, we shared a lot of things together and helped each other realize their own tracks, you know, and like one of the tracks that we did on the Emerson album, I remember playing it for Keith. It was called A Place to Hide. And I played it for him, and he just looked at me, and I thought, oh, boy, he doesn't like this one. And he just goes, you bastard. Yeah. And I took that as a compliment. He goes, let me have that. You know, I took it home, and he came back the next day with this beautiful piano piece for it. You know, just this accompaniment that was just, oh, my God. It was incredible. And he suggested one edit on the song, and which was well-founded. And, yeah, so, I mean, that we worked well in trading ideas. We had a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And we knew that we had each other had our best interests at heart. And so because of that, then you're free to create, because you know that no matter what's being created, it'll be looked at in a balanced way. It'll not be prejudicial. You know, it'll be given all of the due consideration that it's worth. And so because of that, I think a lot of his stuff, of course it seeped in, you know, I'm sure it did, you know, and so, and in a way, some of the stuff was written for him, you know, like John Minimum, you know, that first part was conceived at the same time as the Keith Emerson album, the basic tracks, which also has Bob Birch, by the way, on bass. My great friend that used to play with Elton John is now gone. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like when you're around somebody, you'll a lot of times inherit speech patterns, rhythms, expressions, those things. Well, it's no less the case with music. You know, you'll go these certain eddies and currents that happen. So I think that's probably why you probably hear that.
Yeah. I want to talk about a couple of songs on there, the songs I like the most. Well, the first one is Flesh Wound. It's pretty good. It's a great title there. and when I listened to it, I saw like almost like an action, like a chase song in a movie. Yeah. You know, I could just envision that. And I really love the wah on the guitar. And if I'm using the right word, the tracks of the guitar were sort of contrapuntal to one.
Oh, hell yes.
And
yes, they were.
That seems like it would be really difficult to write over those extended periods.
Well, it's not a question of being hard to write. If you understand the writing process, and this harkens back to the Mahler incident, where when I sit down to write, and I try to tell this to my students too, that when you play and when you compose, this stuff isn't coming from you. You know, I have bad news for people who think that it does. It doesn't. It doesn't come from you at all. It comes through you. And it all depends on the shape of your mental rooms, what shape that'll become when it comes out. And because if you think it comes from you, then all of a sudden you're a finite source. It's like going into the desert with a canteen. The water's going to run out. But if you look at creativity as a river that runs alongside in the desert, and all you have to do is you got to go over there and you got to dip your cup and you've got to drink, then you'll never run out of ideas. I've never experienced, thank God, I've never experienced writer's block for that reason, because I know that none of this has to do with me. You're a conduit for the information. So that way, when you write, if you completely trust that and you're open to it, anything can come through. And all you have to do is recognize it when it does. Like, oh, that's a good part. That's good. I like that. Let me, I have no idea what I'm going to write before I write it. It just comes out. I always look at it like, I always tell people it's like firemen. They're up in the loft and they're all reading their magazines and eating a sandwich and looking at the soap opera until the alarm goes off. And the alarm is the playing of the keyboard or the strumming of the guitar. Like, oh, we're on a call, and they come down the pole. And then it's like, okay, where's the fire? And it's your job to keep your car tuned up so that whoever wants to drive it, it'll respond for them. That's where your practicing comes. That's where your knowledge comes in. But the actual playing and inspiration it comes through you. I'm sure that you've played something or written something where you come back later and go, I don't even remember writing that. I don't remember how I even got to that. I couldn't do that again if I tried. But it tells you that it's not coming from you. It's coming through you. So a lot of these weird rhythm things just occur to me as soon as I hear them. I don't plan them. I don't put them out on a slide ruler. You know, it's all just, this needs to happen now. This needs to happen now. And you write it as you go. So, and then there's tweaking, obviously, but as far as Flesh Wound goes, yeah, there was a lot of like intricate parts that jump in and out of each other. And there's a couple of areas where it really is syncopated and different parts going on. But again, it's not a conscious effort. It's just one of these, what would sound good now that I have that down? Oh, let me try this. Oh, that's good. That's good. So you're basically building it as you go. At least I do. You know, I don't plan it out.
That is the best articulation of that concept that I've ever heard. Music doesn't come from you, it comes through you. And what really hammered it home when I wrote this down, is which is really important for anybody, I think, if you look at it that it comes from you, then it's a finite source. That's pretty important.
Well, that's why people run out of ideas, because, you know, I mean, look at what the Beatles did in 7 years. You tell me that isn't a flow? They tapped into the frickin' Thames, man. I mean, that was just like amazing. You know, that doesn't come from you. They haven't lived that long. They're only 20, for Christ's sake. What does that tell you about Mozart? How much did he have to pull on? No, he was a channel, and that stuff just comes through. From where it comes from, that's your guess. I don't know. I don't make I just know my muses are up there, and I thank them every day for what they've seen fit to bestow upon me to communicate to other people. When people come up and say, man, you're a brilliant composer, I said, well, thanks. I'll tell them when I see them.
I hear you.
It's not me. You know, it's just I'm just thankful that somebody chose me as a vessel for this stuff. I couldn't be happier, but I don't really hold myself up in any kind of high regard for it. I've just been lucky, you know, to be chosen for something like that.
The song you mentioned, The Long Awakening, great song. I was curious, the title of that song, did you have maybe like some sort of a stress or crisis that took a long time to work through?
Well, no, and actually I got to give credit where credit's due on this. The inspiration for the title came from Lyle Workman, because he had done this song called The Rising of the Morning Sun, with it spelled Mourning. So I've named 2 songs after him in honor of him, and that's The Morning Sun, which was a symphonic piece, and this song, because the song was, when I first heard it, it just struck me. It was so beautiful how it built, and it took its time. It was just this wonderful piece, you know, that was written, you know, of a very stressful time in his life, and it always stuck with me. And I've always told him, I said, man, you've written this beautiful, I mean, among all the other wonderful things that he's done, that to me was like his revel. That was like his a crowning piece, up until probably this next album that's coming out. You know,
the Morning Sun, it's called.
Yeah, no, it's called Rising of the Morning Sun.
Rising of the Morning Sun. Okay.
It was just a beautiful piece, and I always wanted to write a song for my son. You know, he's 18 now, and I always felt a little guilty that I hadn't written anything, because everybody I know has written something for their family or their children and all that. But I said, it'll come when it comes. And so I thought the title came like The Long Awakening. And I don't know if I dreamed it or what, because I do dream a lot of titles and then try and find some kind of meaning for it in conscious state. And so what this is really is it's not a stressful thing. It's some poignancy to it, because this is a song about my son, where it starts with gestation in the womb. If you listen to right at the beginning, it's a very fluid kind of environment, weightless environment with the guitars, and you hear this, which was actually his heartbeat.
Oh, you recorded it.
Recorded his heartbeat when he was still in the womb.
That's wild.
And that's the sequence that's going through it. The so I built everything off of his rhythm at that point. And then he's born. I get a little.
It's all right, man. Yeah, I could feel that. Of course, it's your kid.
Yeah.
Is that your oldest?
Yeah, it's my only.
Oh, your only. That's good.
Yeah. Okay. It starts off with him in just the gestation period. Then he's born. You have this beautiful cord come up. And then there's this wonderful time that parents have with their child where they go into the cave and it's just them, you know, in this new world of parenthood. And you hear his voice in the back. I actually have him taped, you know, where you hear him in the background kind of shouting and having, you know, these wonderful expressions that children have. They're completely unbridled. They have no filters at that point. They're just happy to hear their own voice, all of that stuff, that discovery part. And then the song kicks in, and it's you know, the rhythm, and that this is us now, you know, with our new life and teaching and growing. And then becomes a part that's a little more poignant, where it's the angst of adolescence, you know, and all of the worries that parents have, you know, about their kids, and things that would happen to them, you know, like they get a disease or they get a sickness or something that eventually they get over, but you don't know, you know, you're working without a net and without a manual here, you know. And then there's a nylon part that was basically the maternal part with my wife, you know, the tenderness that is there. And then there's a break with a piano that is basically him leaving, you know, and this moment that I remember with my folks, you know, my mom actually, when I left, you know, the look on her face, even though she knew I had to go, this look, you know, like, wow, it's an empty nest now. Our children are gone. And then it comes back in, and it's basically this huge crescendo of him making his way through the world with a guitar solo that's really his parents' guiding light, you know, over the top, that hopefully he'll remember some of the things we taught him. And then there comes an abrupt stop, and then it's this symphonic quartet that happens, where it's basically us in our empty nest at the end of our lives, you know, reflecting on all the things. But there's the theme that goes through it is 3 notes. It's boom, 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 and that's our 3 members of our family. So the 3 notes go all the way through it in different incarnations, in minor keys and all of that. It starts, it's the first thing you hear, and it's the last thing you hear, you know. So it's a full journey of 8 minutes, you know, parenthood.
It's a beautiful track, man. It's really nice. It was one of my 2 favorites.
Well, it was hard for us to get, it was hard for us to get through the track. I remember Troy and I would be sitting here in tears, you know, because it, you know, and I played it for Lyle, and he teared up as well because he's a parent, you know.
Yeah.
So
he will remember what you said. He won't tell you about it. In mid-20s, they start telling you.
Yeah, yeah.
They will.
Yeah, yeah.
Were you playing a Strat on that for the electric stuff?
I was playing. Well, I played so many guitars on that thing, and I tell you the truth. A lot of it was through a pod. You know, the kidney pod that I had.
Oh.
I've got this thing down so well, you know, with my style and the things that I can get I find these wonderful tones out of it. And I think that pod was on most of that. Okay. The guitar solo was I think the Firebird.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded really clean in there.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been Strat. It was really clean.
Yeah. There is Strat in there though. I would have to go back and look at the tracks again, but I know that you know, the obvious is nylon string, and some of the guitars I put completely direct through just a direct box into there, and you know, a lot of the guitars that were in the floating areas at the beginning, but most of the guitar tracks I did were my Pacifica, my Yamaha Pacifica guitar.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That I love, you know. I call it my Marvel superhero because it's got all my Marvel characters on it. And,
do you have that guitar handy, like right there in your studio?
Yeah, you want to see it?
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, and I want to describe it to the people. Okay, so it's a Yamaha Pacifica. You know, it kind of looks like a Strat. It's literally got all the freaking cool Submariner, Doctor Strange, Iron Man.
Oh, you know them.
Of course, dude. I grew up. I'm 55.
Well, I want you to know that I had
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I had Black Panther on here before it was cool to have Black Panther on anything. This was in '90s. People go, "Who's the guy in the purple?" I said, "That's Black Panther." "Who's that?" I said, "What? Who's that?" That's the first black comic character besides the Falcon. Come on.
Silver Surfer's on there. What made you do that? That's a really cool.
Yeah.
Even the markings. I've never seen markings like that. They're like,
you can see the markings. It's hard to see it, but what these are, they were the things that you ordered from the first page on the guitar on the comic book. There was a first page that had like novelty stuff, like onion gum, throw your own voice, X-ray specs, right?
Yeah,
that's what all these drawings were. I photographed all the authentic drawings, and I put them in. I had reflective pearl, and then the clear acetate of the drawing, and then lighting gel, and then epoxy. It was this Leo Knapp was working at Yamaha at the time. So we got the thing, and then of course at the headstock is 12 cents, which was see the 12 cents up there?
Yeah, that is so cool.
Because that's how much they were when I was collecting comics, you know.
Yeah, what a cool guitar. Are they making that? That is, I bet you that would sell.
Pacifica, but this was a total custom job for me.
Wow, what a very cool looking guitar, man.
Oh yeah, and it actually got us the gig with Iron Man.
Is that was rosewood or ebony? I couldn't.
It's ebony.
Yeah,
and,
really great.
Yeah, I brought it in with John Debney. We were auditioning for Iron Man 2, and the guys from Marvel came in, and of course I brought that guitar.
Yeah,
and we were working on some of the cues, and you know, you see if they like them. They said, "Man, where'd you get that guitar?" I said, "Oh, I made it. I was a huge comic fan." So we started yammering about comics, and they said, "Well, look, anybody that's into it that much, man, I think we got the right guys for this." You know, so that was the guitar that got me the Iron Man gig.
That should lock you up on every gig, every Marvel movie ever made, man.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it was cool. The only thing I regret is I didn't have Stan Lee sign it. You know, I had the opportunity, I just didn't do it. But
did you have to license? You're not.
No, because I'm not selling anything with it. No, I did have to. They were suspicious at first because I called Marvel. I said, "What are the aniline dyes that you used?" Because at the time there was no computer. We didn't draw on the computer, and they're like, "What? What are you talking? What do you need that information for?" I said, "Oh, I'm making guitar for Yamaha. I'm endorsed, and I'm going to draw these things, and I need to know what they are." So they told me where to get them, and so I went into my comics and I found the perfect portraits of the ones, and I redrew them, and then took photos.
Oh, because you're an artist like your dad, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I used to draw.
You drew all those?
Yeah.
Holy shit! That's really
Well, yes and no. I mean, I drew them, but I didn't conceive them. They were complete drawings of, like Jim Steranko and John Buscema and John Romita and all the guys that did them. They were exactly replicas of that stuff. But so I can't take credit for that. I just replicated it.
No, but I used to do that with remember tracing paper?
Sure. I used to do that in grammar school, man. I would customize, and we always had the name tags on the front of the desk, right?
Yeah.
And I'd always have to customize with superheroes and stuff like that.
That's
and
so
at the time I was in 4th grade. I used tracing paper for that, just to do that, because it was cool, man.
That's such a cool guitar. It's literally one of the coolest guitars I've seen. It sounds
amazing too. I mean, it's just, that's my go-to guitar. So a lot of the stuff on Celluloid Debris was the Yamaha Pacifica.
Beautiful stuff, man. Do you have any other side hustles going? Because I know you're involved with licensing. Do you have any, when I say side hustles, I mean either in the music business, doing things, getting paid besides picking up your guitar on a tour or a session, or outside of music completely?
Well, I mean, I do a lot. Like I was saying before, I don't really do too much side hustling. I'm pretty much all about the musical aspect, whatever it has to be, whatever it's, it's a band or it's a project that I'm dealing with. Teaching also takes up a lot of the time, doing that, because I've gotten back into doing that now. I used to do that when I first, started. I was doing a lot of that, but have now gotten back into it. But I do a lot of voiceover stuff, like I said before, and that's kind of my only other, what you call side hustle. I think that's about it. Everything else is just all about either playing it or teaching it,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marc, what were some of the low points or maybe darker periods in life you've had to deal with, and how'd you get through them?
Well, I think the major ones have been all the suicides I've had to deal with. Bob Birch, Ronnie Montrose, Keith Emerson, and they all happened in a relatively short amount of time, where I thought, man, what's in the water here? And I understand all three. I get all three, why they happen. And a lot of people, when they talk about this kind of stuff, they say, it's selfish. It's, all these things. But what they have to understand is that unless you walk in those shoes for any amount of time, to judge that action is selling the person short, because it really is about the stay, not the leaving, that you judge a person by. And although I think that I know that at this point, I really do feel that a person's absence is felt much keener than their presence.
So hold on a minute. Their absence is felt much greater. Well, the pain of missing somebody is much deeper.
It becomes more evident how much you like them when they're not there anymore. So that's why I think it's felt a lot keener than when they are there. You know? And it's like when you lose a pet. You know, the big gap of energy that's not there anymore. It's tough. You have to get another one to fill it because you go nuts.
It's tough.
So with humans, it's even more, you know. And so, again, like I say, it's one of those things where everybody, you know, is quick to judge and you know, when they get past the shock of it, you know. But, you know, there were so many mitigating circumstances in all of these that which you know, those are private things, and I'm not really going to pursue those. But it's just, you know, as far as their effect on me, I really had to, you know, I remember in Lonesome Dove, which was one of my favorite westerns. Gus McCrae says when this guy gets killed in the river, he always says the best thing to do with death is ride away from it. And I always thought it was a great credo because it meant, you know, you can't just let that stuff linger with you because it's not going to do you any good. You have to ride away from it and get on with your life, you know, minus this person. And you know, it took a while for me, you know, with Bob, you know, he and I were best friends, and you know, it came as an absolute shock. But I understand what happened, and I forgive him for it, and I understand why he did it. It was an actual, you know, as oddly as it might seem, it was a rather noble act on his part. I don't recommend it for anyone, however, but it's and then with Keith, it was, you know, I didn't have enough time to mourn because they wanted an Emerson special. They wanted a tribute concert. And so I put all of my energy into that, which was probably the best thing that could happen. You know, I called all these wonderful people in LA to do this show that we did at the El Rey Theater. And everybody, you know, to a man said, and a woman said, absolutely, when do you need us, you know? And it was one of those things where there was no egos, nothing. Everybody came prepared. Everybody nailed their stuff. It was an incredible night. Luckily, we got it on tape. And at some point, it will be released. You know, the DVD is actually finished. It's just going through legalities. But it was one of those things where I didn't have enough time to concentrate on his loss. I had to get the show together. And so within that show, you know, I was able to exercise a lot of the demons, I think, in that performance. Because I wasn't, it really had kind of exhausted me. And as a matter of fact, that week, I got sick and I lost my voice completely. I had no voice at all. And luckily I had Travis Davis there that was going to spot me. But about half an hour before the show started, I was able to go into the bathroom and find it. And it was like one of those things where basically note by note, I was able to go, and I actually was able to sing. But so with all of that, it was just, I didn't really have enough time to really have it absorbed. But I figured that was my way of doing it, was putting together a show that was befitting of what Keith meant to everybody, really. And I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of everybody that contributed. So that's how you get through it, man. You get through it by working, you know, by moving on.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
You're a lefty, right?
I certainly am.
What's been early on, what was the biggest challenge playing guitar lefty? Well,
the biggest challenge was finding one. They didn't make them like they do now, or did. You know, you had to be custom made, you know, and you had to wait forever. And of course, they upcharged you for it, you know, all of that stuff. So it's, you know, I had to, you know, settle for right-handers being, or right-handed acoustic guitars being switched. And my dad would like go out and cut a plastic pick guard and glue it on the other side for me, you know. So I have these, you know, double pick guards on my early acoustic guitars, and it wasn't until I was in high school that I got my first electric, which was the ES335, you know, just like Alvin
That was
Lee.
lefty.
It was lefty, yeah.
Oh, man, your parents super cool, man.
$460 for that pup at the time, which, you know, in 1971 was, you know, wasn't a small amount of money.
Quite a lot of money.
And but what was weird about it, when I first picked it up and played it, I couldn't play it because it had these slinky strings on it. And I was used to, my fingers were so strong from playing acoustic guitar and bending that shit that it was like, oh my God, I can't play an electric. What am I going to do? You know, and it wasn't until I realized that, oh no, just calm down. You know, it's okay. You just don't have to work as hard. You know, it's kind of like getting a power steering, you know, when you had to drive a truck.
Yeah, man, I get it. Totally.
So it was that kind of thing. So, but yeah, so that was my,
do you still have that guitar, the 330?
No, I sold it. You see, at the time, this is what sucks about the industry. By the time you can afford things, they start giving them to you for free. When you really need them, they don't give them to you. You got to buy them. And so you had to trade up. I didn't have enough money to, I wanted a Les Paul. I wanted more sustain, you know, so I had to sell that to get a Les Paul. And then as soon as I got my Les Paul, right, I'll never forget. I was in the Keystone, what was called the Stone in San Francisco. We were about ready to play, and I'm out front for a minute, and I'm hearing on the music that they're playing this thing it was called "Goodbye Pork Pie Hat" by a guy named Jeff Beck.
Yeah, imagine that.
Bend and twirl these frickin' notes. I'm going, how is he doing that? Well, that's a wobble arm. I look down. My Les Paul does not have a wobble arm. Right back to Leo's Music in Oakland. I said, okay. And I had to take a loss on it. You know, after playing it for a while, I had to take a loss on it. And I got, you know, they didn't have anything there left-handed, of course. So I had to have it made. And that was a Charvel, one of the first Charvels. So, okay. And they wouldn't make it for me. They just gave me the body and the neck. And I had to outfit it myself. They wouldn't even put it together. So that's the hassles of being left-handed, you know. But thank God Gary Brower in San Francisco put the thing together for me, and the thing plays like a charm. That's my Dragon guitar with a double E ticket, you know, and I still have that to this day. It was one of the most rockin' and sounding guitars I have, you know, and it's got a freaking wobble arm, pal. So it became so much of my style. But you know, yeah, left-handed was always, and plus the fact that when they stick you on the left-hand side of the stage, then you're sword fighting with the next guy, you know, and it's like, no, I always have to be on the stage right, you know, I always put it on the riders, and I have to be over there because that way, otherwise I'm putting somebody's eye out, you know, with the neck. So, but it does look cool when you got right and left-handed, you know, stuff, and it's easier to teach because you're like a mirror image, you know. Yeah. So there's perks, you know, but yeah, early on that's what it was.
Why do I know that name, Gary Brower, man?
Well, he's very, very prominent luthier in San Francisco. He's like one of the go-to guys in San Francisco.
Brawer?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, I have him in my book. Yeah, someone was a fan to me. He's a tech. He's also a tech. He's tech for everybody.
Yes. He's very, very famous.
I knew that name.
And deservedly so.
Tell me what your go-to guitar is right now, and what other two guitars would round out your top three, and has that changed, which it sounds it has.
Well, yeah, it always was changed, but the Pacific is my go-to because it has so many variances of tone on it. You know, it's great. Second guitars would be my Firebird. Because and this is the good thing about being left-handed. I have the only left-handed Firebird they ever made.
Are you serious?
I'm totally serious. They made one. Have you seen one? You ever seen one?
I wouldn't be aware of it, to be honest with you. It's not something I'm looking for.
Firebird 5. They made one of them, and because I was a huge Johnny Winter fan, I always wanted a Firebird. Couldn't find one, and so about maybe 10 years ago, I was down at Norm's Rare Guitars thinking, well, maybe I can flip one, you know, because it's an oblong shape and maybe the dials won't get in my way. So I went down there to look at one of the non-reverses. How much you want for it? $5,000. Okay. I went home to do some research on it to see if I could do some bargaining. I go to a place that I've gone to several times and I've bought several guitars from them. It's called Southpaw Guitars in Houston, and it's just a left-handed guitar shop.
That's a pretty cool place.
Because if it was any closer, I'd be living in an apartment or out of my car. So, I went on the site, and I swear to God, man, on the splash page, there's this Firebird. And I'm like, what? Firebird? Wow, they must have started remaking them. Excellent. And I look at it down below, and it says, the only Firebird Gibson, left-handed Firebird 5 Gibson ever made. and I start to break out in a cold sweat. You know, I mean, I'm talking about a shaft of light coming down on it with a choral group singing. You know, it's that kind of thing. I'm hearing this now. Like, this is the guitar I've been looking for. My God, you know, it's right here. The day I go to look for it, I mean, it was like the weirdest thing. I didn't think about it before. It's like, why today did they get the notion to go start looking for a left-handed Firebird? And here's this guitar. And the one catch is it's 28 grand. It was $27,500 for this thing. And that's hence the cold sweat. So I'm trying to justify buying this guitar for that amount of money, right? And I start calling my musician friends, you know. And I remember I called Bob Birch. I'll never forget. I called him and said, Bob, I got a crisis. He goes, what's wrong, man? I said, oh, dude, Firebird 5, the only left-handed one they ever made. He says, you gonna get it? I said, well, the price is, it's like they want 27 for it. And he goes, oh, hell, that's nothing. Get it. I said, really? He goes, yeah, 2,700. Are you kidding? And I said, no, Birch, at 27,000. He goes, you're out of your fucking mind.
Yeah, man.
And then he says, no, wait a minute. You should get it, you know? And so, but I had made up my mind that, nah, I can't spend that money. I've got a family to support. I've got all this stuff. So I was talking to my wife, Joey, about it. Just mentioning to her, I said, you're not going to believe it, man. I found, you know, the day I was looking for, I found the only Firebird. She says, so are you getting it? And I said, no, honey, I can't afford that. That's, you know, and she says, well, can you live without it? And I go, what do you mean? He says, well, she says, that was put there for a reason, you know. You just didn't start looking at that, and just on the one day in your life that you're looking for it, it appears the only one. She says, you know, he says, you'll either have to get it or you'll have to be able to live with the fact that you had the opportunity to own it and you passed on it. Now, can you do that? She says, personally, my opinion is you should buy it. You know, so she was the one that talked me into buying that guitar. And they brought it out in their own airline seat. They booked a seat for it on the airline.
As they should.
Yeah. They brought it, hand delivered it, you know, and all of this, and took a picture to make sure it was in my ownership. So, you know, so anytime I call Southpaw Guitars now, I says, Margaret, oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Can we help you, sir?
They got a wall.
I was their biggest sale. Yeah, I was their biggest sale ever. But so I have that here, and it just sounds, you know, it sounds amazing. It's a 1964 Firebird 5.
That's very cool.
And, you know, so that would be my second guitar. And my third guitar would have to be the Gretsch Duo Jet. I love the sound of the Gretches. I put flat wound strings on it like George Harrison did, the pyramid flat wounds. And the thing makes any track sound amazing. It has this beautiful, wet, kind of glistening, glassy tone that only those Gretches get, you know. So I just love that guitar. It always sounds great. So I think of those three, if I had to take three of them with me, those would be the three that I would take.
Great story, man.
Yeah.
Who's favorite players you've enjoyed jamming with?
Who that I've enjoyed jamming with? Well, Ronnie Montrose is at the top of the list because Ronnie, you know, I did so much stuff, you know, with him growing up, you know, and he was a carpenter. And so by virtue of that, he knew how to build a house. And he built his solos in the same way that he built a house. He laid a foundation, and he put up the framing, and then he would put the drywall, and then he put the next floor, and then he would paint it, then he would furnish it. I mean, his solos had direction. They had a narrative. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people miss in some great players, and especially in instrumental music, that it's all about storytelling. You know, all music is storytelling. And it's not about reciting the alphabet like a lot of guys just, blah, 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 they just do. It's like, no, you have to tell a story. Your notes have got to be your letters. Your chords have got to be your words. Your phrases have got to be your sentences. You have to form a paragraph. That paragraph has to lead to the next paragraph, and both of those have to make sense together. Then you have a gap, and then you have a new idea, and then you do this. You're telling a story, and it has to have an arc. It has to have characters. And so that's what Ronnie did in his soloing, and he did in his compositions and stuff. It taught me a lot about how to structure a song, how to structure a solo so that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so when we would do stuff together, we would just vibe each other, and we knew where each other were going because we knew how a solo or how a thing is supposed to be built. We knew when to stop. And that's the thing, where a lot of people may not know when to stop when your welcome is over. You know, it's like, no, we've reached a pinnacle here. Now let's move to a new spot, you know. So he was always one of my favorites to jam with. And another one, of course, was Keith, because it was so unexpected, the things that he would do. And he was unbridled, you know, with a sense of humor and everything. We would go in areas that have no idea where we're headed. So it always made you a better player. You'd have to listen and really have to respond. So, I mean, there's been so many players that I've been able to have the honor of playing with, guys like Lee Sklar and Joe Travers and Greg Bissonette and Troy. Just, there's so many great players that are just, there's a symbiosis when we play. Like Danny Serafin and I, we lock eyes a lot. Like, isn't this great? You know, and there's just too many to name, really. You know, just they've all been fun in their own, you know, in their own sense.
Top 3 desert island discs, Mark.
Oh boy, let's see. Top 3 desert island.
Just for now, just for this minute.
Because I could give you 10, man.
Oh, I know. And then if I ask you 10 minutes from now, or an hour from now.
Well, I think it would have to top the list Electric Ladyland. Mm-hmm. I think that's the definitive guitar album. I don't think you ever get better than that. That was where you really understood Hendrix and understood the deeper qualities, you know, not the lighting up of the guitars or the, you know, the playing of the teeth and all that. As wonderful as that was visually, when you listen to side 3, 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be, with that, and you listen to what he's doing under there, and that's not synths, man, that's not samplers, that's the damn guitar. Yeah. And all of those amazing things that he was doing, it just put me in a zone that I've never been in since, you know. And then you listen to Voodoo Child, the long version, and you listen to how that thing just, it's like a roller coaster. It's amazing, the jamming on that. And then you listen to All Along the Watchtower, and you listen to how perfect that solo is and how many different incarnations he goes through. You know, he starts with that wah-wah, then he goes to a single note, and then he, you know, then he does octaves, then he does chordal stuff. You know, it's like a guitar lesson in itself, that one solo. You know, House Burning Down, Burning of the Midnight Lamp. I mean, there was so many amazing things on that album. You know, it's just, I don't know how it couldn't be an album that wouldn't be on anyone's desert island list, you know. Plus, it's good to fuck a coconut, too. You know, you be on the desert, you know, island. Dark Side of the Moon. Yeah. For obvious reasons, I don't even have to go into that. You know, just
my number 1.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it was just one of those things that all the planets were aligned. You know, as far as 3, I would have to say, and this may not be a popular one, but Focus 3.
Oh yeah, sure.
Major Jan Ackerman fan, and he's to this day just so unorthodox as far as his playing style. You know, it's Jan. And this is one of the things I think about a lot of players back in the 60s and 70s, is that you knew within 2 measures who was playing.
Sure.
You know, they had their own signatures, kind of like the Cars back then. You know how the Cars, you knew the Cars by their look. They all had faces.
Yeah, man. It's very, or the tail fin or something.
Yeah, the tail fin, something. You knew it coming 50 miles away. You could see the thing coming. Now you have to, they all look like electric shavers, and you have to look, you got to look at like the logo to understand, like, what is that? Is that a Hyundai, or what is that thing? Because they all look exactly the same. There's no individuality anymore. Then there was, and I think it's the same way with guitars, because there's so many plugins that everybody has now, and they play through the same plugins, that a lot of the stuff sounds exactly the same. And I'm not hearing style as much anymore. I'm hearing it with guys like Ian Thornley, you know, with Big Wreck, which I love. I love his playing. You know, obviously guys like Tom Morello, where you hear, you know, a definite style. But back then, you knew Clapton from Beck, from Hendrix to Jan Ackerman, from Johnny Winter to Steve Howe to Ronnie Montrose to Johnny Winter. You could tell every single one of them within a few notes. Yes. Their signature, their style, you know. And so I think that's, you know, that's one of the things that I think needs to be cultivated now is that individuality again, you know. But Focus 3 had that. It was, you know, that third side, answers, questions, answers, where it's just one long jam, and it just, you know, the art of jamming is no more better exemplified than like on Electric Ladyland than on Focus 3 as well. It's just amazing stuff, just incredible. And to this day, I shake my head at Jan's playing ability. I just like, it floors me, and I love it. I don't ever want to figure it out because it'll always be magic to me. You know,
I'm gonna go back and listen to that.
You know? Yeah,
yeah, I haven't listened in a while.
Yeah.
What's the best decision you've ever made?
Marrying my wife.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about that. How long have you been together?
35 years.
See, that is a big props.
Well, here's the thing. With her, she's never been in competition with what I've done. You know, it was never like, when are you going to get done out of the studio? It's never like that. She knows that I need to be in here to do these certain things, and we'll have the time to do those things. She's got enough independence that she can occupy herself with other things as well. But we're very close. You know, we're soulmates, and we have a great sense of humor. We enjoy watching the same shows, you know, but she has her own life she just got her swords on the weekend in black belt.
Awesome.
Black belt in swords. It was amazing to watch her. And she's got a 2nd degree black belt as well, and is Tae Kwan Do. And she's in the improv class. She does these things, and she's got an amazing group of friends and all of that, and represents me well whenever, you know, things need to be taken care of on a gig or that. She's right there. And it's just, she's always said she's loved to watch be present for the creative process. She's always loved to watch the bands that we've been in, you know, because we rehearse here. She always loves to watch that being developed, with, you know, being constructed and to the end thing. It's always been something that she's enjoyed. So, yeah, I lucked out, and I knew I had the right one because we were playing at a club, and she was a bartender, looked just like Nina Blackwood at the time, MTV, just stunning. And I walked up to her, we were playing, I was all cocky, you know, and I said she was bartending, and I mentioned something, some crude sexual innuendo, you know, joke at her, you know, and she goes, "Come here." You know, she said it very, very like, "Come hither," you know, and so I came over, and she grabbed my pants, you know, grabbed the top of my pants and was rubbing me right there, pulls my pants open and pours an entire beer down my pants and goes, "Cool off."
Nice.
And I went to home.
That's perfect, man.
And she just walked back to the bar, you know. It was like, wow. I just got shut down in the best way, you know. It was like she wasn't buying into any of that bullshit, you know. So she was the one. I thought it was amazing. She's amazingly kind. I remember the moment I fell in love with her. She emptied her whole purse out into a Jerry Lewis telethon coin thing. We were at a burger shop. She just took out everything she had and stuck it all in there, you know. I just went, wow, I think I love this girl, you know, and have ever since, you know.
Well, congratulations to the two.
Yeah.
It's a long
and the second thing was the birth of my son. I mean, you know, I've been incredibly blessed with both of them in my life.
Congratulations, man. That's a great track record. Something about yourself people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
Well, I like Tiny Tim. Huge Tiny Tim fan. Did you ever hear that first record?
Only one I know is the same one everybody knows, Tiptoe Through the Tulips.
Okay, no, but I'm talking about the album.
No.
Okay, here's your homework, pal.
Yeah.
Go find God Bless Tiny Tim. Okay.
Right.
It was produced by Richard Perry, brilliantly, who did a lot of the Nielsen stuff and a lot of other acts. It's a work of art. It's amazing. You would not think so, but he had a great voice. And there's it's like the romantic vaudeville kind of stuff, but the arrangements are incredible on that album. I would have to listen to that album in the closet because my friends, if they knew I was listening to Tiny Tim, they go, what are you, nuts, you know? But you have to give the album its day in court because the arrangements and the flow, all of that, it's amazingly produced. You're going to be very surprised.
I will check it out.
Yes, it's
without a doubt.
So I'm a big Tiny Tim fan. I can recite every Star Trek episode dialogue.
You're a Trekkie.
Major Trekkie. I'll tell you how much I'm a Trekkie. Do you have time for a story?
Go ahead, man. Yeah.
I had in AM was like 84. I had put together a tape of the episodes, one-liners for the episodes, of all the suggestive stuff that they had ever said during the show. Not that it was suggestive, but it could be taken that way. And I made my own episode because of the comment that they originally made. Goes, all this power surging and throbbing, yet under control. Are you like that, Captain? Right? I thought, oh, really? Really? Okay. How many others are there like that? So I put together like a 15-minute piece. I had the original Star Trek music. I had the original sound effects. And it's just one successive one-liner after the other. I didn't put them in any specific order. I just started and worked, right? And the thing is hilarious to people that know the original show. And I called it Star Trek: The Lust episode. Right?
Is that on YouTube, man? That's a viral shit. It sounds like.
Yeah. I think it may be. But check this out. We played it on the Marc and Brian show. Kevin Gilbert and I hosted the show one morning, right? 4 hours. We had to come up with all this stuff to do. One of them was I pulled this tape. I said, hey, Kev, man, this would be kind of cool to play, you know, because I know Star Trek, a lot of Star Trek fans now. And so we would play up, we put the premises like, hey, we just found that we were in the vaults at Paramount. We found this thing. It's an episode of Star Trek after they've been away for far too longer than 5 years, you know. And so, and what you have on this thing, you've got like Bones sodomizing Spock. Everybody's having sex with everybody else, right? But it's only the one-liners from the show. It's just in a particular sequence. It's very, very funny, right? And especially if you're Trekkie, you know the line. So we're playing these installments on the radio, and we go to take calls, and I notice on one of the lines is Paramount Studios. And I went, oh, shit. You know, so I took the call off the air. And I called, and she says, yes, this is Kelly Ferguson. I'm Gene Roddenberry's assistant. Yeah, you know, expecting I'm going to get sued, right? And he goes, are you able to come down to the studio? And I'm like, for what purpose? And she said, Gene heard your thing today and thinks it's the funniest thing he's ever heard. He wants to play it for the writers.
Wow.
And I went, I will be right down there, you know, after the show, you know. So I went down there. And I just got into town. Here I am in the Paramount lot. I go into Gene's office, and he's not there. But the Vulcan harp is up on the wall. You know, all these the original artifacts are in his office, and I'm just geeking out, right? And he comes in, and I meet him, and it's like, you know, it was like amazing. Here's Gene Roddenberry, and he goes, it was a very funny tape. So we played it for the writers, and he says, I need to get a copy of that for Leonard and Bill to play for them. So I said, here. I'll make another one, you know. And he says, you have to leave right away? I said, nope. You know, he says, would you like a tour of the set? I went, yeah. So we toured the Star Trek set, and they were still filming Second Generation down there, right? So we watched them film a little of that, but they still had the sets. They used a lot of the sets for the Wrath of Khan. And so I went into he says, here's the engineering, you know, this is where Spock died, you know, so I'm starting to get a little bit emotional, and I put my hand on the glass, the whole 9 yards, you know, and he goes, would you like to see the bridge? Yes. So as we're going down the hall, I said, excuse me, Gene, but I have to run down the hall, because anytime in Star Trek, when they showed the hall, there was a red alert flashing and everybody was running. I have to run down the hall. I hope you excuse me. So I ran down the hall. He's shaking his head like, oh man, this guy's old. And they weren't using the bridge that day, but he had the gaffers pull off all the covers and light the entire bridge. And he goes, go sit in the captain's chair. So I sat in Captain Kirk's chair.
Did you get a picture of that?
No, I didn't know. We didn't have any, there was no cell phones back then. Yeah, this was just me and my memory. So I'm spinning around going, Lieutenant Uhura, you know, hailing frequency. I'm reenacting all of my childhood fantasies, swiveling around in the chair, you know, and they're laughing their asses off. But it was like, man, from just that little tape to sitting in Captain Kirk's chair, it's like, life is funny, man.
Yeah, man, that's cool.
It's a funny thing. So, yes, go ahead.
Don't say you always got to, it's these connections, but they always start with you doing something.
Yeah. Weird how that happens. So,
cool.
So I'm a Star Trek nerd. The only other thing, maybe, I don't know, I cry at Andy Griffiths still.
Andy Griffith.
The old Andy Griffith.
Yeah. Opie.
Some of those moments are just poignant. Just, you know, and some of the stuff with Barney. I don't realize Barney was just, you know, such a great character, you know. But Don Knotts was just brilliant at that. So, yeah, some of those still get me to this day, you know. So, 2
more questions, Marc. Do you have any hobbies or interests outside of music? I guess you just talked about some of them.
Yeah, well, Tae Kwan Do. 2nd degree. I'm going for my 3rd degree in November. Yeah. So that's that's about the only thing I have time for, really. You know.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of.
I still have my comic collection. You know, so that was my ongoing hobby. But yeah, but that's about all I have time for, really.
That's pretty good, man. That's a pretty involved.
Yeah, it requires a lot of effort, but it's great, and it keeps you. And the company you keep, a lot of them, you know, we're having to keep up with 20-year-olds, you know, and younger, you know, so it keeps you, I think, young in that way. You know, your physiological age is much younger than your physical age.
Yeah, well, I think exercise and like, you know, maybe pets or stuff like that are things that really have a profound impact on your life that are not super difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we do that. I'm raising a squirrel right now.
Are you really? That's cool.
His name's Versace. My son named him, and yeah, he's a cool little dude, you know. And we can't release him anymore because he's been domesticated. I tried to get him to the Wildlife Society, but he won't.
So, like, you have a squirrel now?
Yeah, we have a squirrel in the house.
Yeah.
And watching, you know, we've kind of been a way station for animals in this community. I don't know why. They seem to find there must be a newsletter somewhere. Go to the Bonillas, you know, rehabilitation, you know. So we've had raven flight training. We've had hummingbird rescue. It just happens. Animals find their way to our house. I don't know why.
That's cool.
I'm not complaining. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's really kind of a blessing, actually. Hey, and last question: biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this has been intentional, and how much is a natural part of aging?
Well, I think if I had to be honest about it, I think I don't worry as much as I used to. About stuff. I used to be a lot more high strung, I think, you know, and like, you know, because the thing that I do, you know, every time that I finish a project, I'm out of work till the next thing, you know. It's one of those things where people go, how do you do that? Where you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. You don't know any of that. I said, I don't know. It's become a way of life. And there's always been something that's come up that's gotten us to the next step, you know. So I've learned now not to worry about that, to kind of give it up to the universe. I figure they've got me this far that they won't going to drop me on my head now. So I don't tax my present existence with worrying about the future, because then that ruins the time that you know the only time that you know that you do have.
Yeah, right now,
you know. So I've learned to kind of accept those things. I wouldn't do anything over, you know, and just and I think a lot of that I think some of it's age and experience. But I always look at life now as like driving in traffic, where you know that exit, you want to get off at that particular exit, you know, but there's no way over there right now. Yeah, well, if you stay long enough and you drive long enough, some car is going to, you know, pull out and go into the next lane, and hey, I'm over. Oh, I'm over now, you know. So you kind of have to wait for an opening, you know, and then take it when you see it. And so far it's held me in good stead, man. I'm still here, still vertical.
Well, man, I hope that continues. Let me tell people where they can find you. First of all, thank you very much for your time, man. Congratulations on the 35 years. That's the most impressive thing I got out of this, man. That's because I'm at 27. It's not easy, man. It's a lot of teamwork.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of teamwork.
Yeah.
It's Marc Bonilla, M-A-R-C, and Bonilla is B-O-N-I-L-L-A. And best place to find Marc online is at marcbonillamusic.com. The new record, which is fucking great, is called Celluloid Debris. It's just incredibly well written, and it's a masterpiece as far as guitar. And just is a great music record, man.
Thank you.
You have a new book, Balance of Power. What is that all about?
It's all these years too, I've written down things that occurred to me at the time that they've occurred to me with regards to playing, those types of things. And I wanted to write a definitive book, hopefully definitive, on the nuts and bolts of guitar playing. In other words, only the things you need, not the things that you don't need. And there's so many things where you've got, you know, all these modes and 1,001 chords and all this stuff. And I feel like it's like a closet where you've got so many clothes, you can't find the things that you really want to wear. You know, you start pulling out stuff going, oh man, I haven't worn this in you know, ever worn this or whatever. I've tried to get rid of all those clothes you don't wear and just put in the essential clothes that you need. And, you know, I've gone down to just basically a handful of scales that you would ever want to use, being one of them the major scale, which you can use over any chord, anything, but you have to know how to apply it. And you'd be surprised at how amazing it sounds.
And you talk about how to apply it in the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I start with basic music theory and try to really make sure that everybody understands. I'm surprised how many people, when I teach them, really don't have a grasp on it, because I think the word theory kind of freaks them out a little bit. Like, you need a lab coat and a pointer. It's like, no, you don't. It's basic math, and it's pretty easy if you understand, if it's imparted correctly. So what I've tried to do is make it very, very simple and applicable to the guitar as well. And I go into how chords are built, what makes a chord, why you call it a certain thing, taking all the mystery out of that stuff. And then gotten into, the scales and some of the techniques that I use. Oops, sorry. Some of the techniques that I use. And then also at the end of the book, after all this stuff, and I do give chords and things of that nature, but also put in where the stuff comes from, how to lock into it when you play. Again, kind of what we were talking about before, things that the videos and books don't talk about, the being in a band situation, how to conduct yourself in a band situation to get the most out of the band, your role in the band, how to play with another piano player, all these other things that are learned by doing and not just by going to school to learn, because they will never teach you the realities of playing. So there's a lot of street knowledge in the book that is essential. I'm trying to save everybody a little bit of time in realizing these things now, and then there's suggested listening in the back. I've got 50 examples of the things that I teach in the book from different guitar players that are linked on the site. So that you can really go there and listen to all of them. And I pointed out, here's what to listen for. These techniques that I've taught in the book, these are examples of that.
That's awesome.
There's like Gilmore and Hendrix and Bloomfield and all these guys that knew how to do this stuff. So it's a real player's book, with that in mind. So, yeah. And
where can people get that?
They can get that on the website too.
On MarcBonillaMusic.com.
Yeah, everything is available on the website. I decided not to give, because I was told that if I signed up with Hal Leonard, they take 80% of it. It's like, really?
Hey, that's less than the record company takes.
I know it. That's why I'm releasing. I don't need them.
Half full.
It's like, what did they do? They didn't done nothing. So yeah. So right now it's just for download. You can download it, and if you want to take it, you can get it printed out. It's no problem. But it's in full color, so that you can really, and all the key words that I have mentioned in there. There's a glossary in the back, so if people don't understand these particular words or whatever, you look them up right away. So everything is pretty well laid out in a logistic form, in a progressive form. So
very cool, man.
Yeah.
Again, you can get all that at Marc Bonilla Music. It's Marc, M-A-R-C, Bonilla, B-O-N-I-L-L-A, music.com. And Marc also does lessons, Skype lessons. So if you want to connect with him, go to his website at Marc Bonilla Music, and there is a tab that says lessons. You can connect with him there. And as far as shows go, he will be posting his shows on there as they're coming up. So check out there when he's playing it. Go see him and tell him you heard him on the show. I like that your book and Celluloid Debris, they're both like not coming of age. They're both like kind of like life summaries, of
yeah, they are. Yeah, that's exactly it. Well, there'll be a reason for this. This isn't really, I'm not getting rich on any of this stuff. It's not the point. The point is making other people rich, hopefully. And that's I've tried to, because I know what I would have wanted as far as like a music book growing up, something that was practical that I could relate to, that wasn't just, here's these chords, here's this stuff. There's so much that's antiseptic, so, so it's just, for me, it's just really about expression. It's about communication expression. It always has been. It's kind of how I was raised.
Marc, thanks for everything. I love the new record. Everybody check out the new Marc's new record. It's Celluloid Debris. It's freaking great. Thank you for everything, man. I appreciate it. Hang on a second. We'll wrap up. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Please support Marc Bonilla and the music he's putting out there. And he's a warrior, and he's done a lot of good stuff. And check him out at MarcBonillaMusic.com. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Marc, thanks for everything.
Thank you.